Okay. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for taking the time to join today. As you heard, this session will be recorded. My name is David, and I'm a co-executive director here at Peaceful Social Good. And this is our first meeting of 2022. We have a few really exciting things to share with you, and it's your choice. You can be audio only because maybe it's morning and you haven't had your first coffee. You can be in a video. It's up to you. At the end of the session, we'll do a quick photo moment to share. So if you're not going to get ready for that, you still have about 45 minutes or so. So what we have organized for you today, we'll do a quick opening. You'll hear a little bit from me in terms of highlights from 2021. But then we have a lot of the focus in today is on the last project that just finished, which is Up Nepal. We are very glad that have Andreas is one of the directors at Up Nepal to tell us a little bit more about the organization, what they're doing, and the impact that they're having. We also then have 5 volunteers that will share some of the work that they have done, and there will be some feedback from Andreas as well as a winner selected. I will then come back and share with you some exciting things that we have planned for 2022. January was incredibly busy by like any standards in terms of things that we've done, and I'm really happy about sharing the things that we have today. And then we'll have a little bit of a community pool on presentations that the last project that we did in December, which was to look at our own internal data in terms of our community. And then there will be a save the date for you in terms of announcing what is the next project that's going to come up and when. Keep using the chat. Both Frederick and I will keep an eye on it. If there's any questions, if you have anything if there's any technical issues, let us know and we can go through that. As I said, we have a packed agenda, so let's get going. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is the work that we did in 2021. So we did 4 big projects: Verifita, Sunny Street, Foundation Fedorova, as well as Crowd2Map in Tanzania. If you don't know, now there's a link in Tableau Public with a profile for Peaceful Social Good. So if you are using Tableau Public, you can go there and upload your visualization, or just share the visualization, and we'll put it there to make sure that it's showcased as part of the work for Peaceful Social Good. And you can, of course, have that in your profile as well. We often share some of the links for visualizations that we have there. So if you also want to see this visualization that Frederick created, this is a tracker for all the projects that happened in the previous year and who took part and the different things that happened throughout 2021. I just wanted to kind of comment on something. Even though we have only 4 projects, we had submissions which were 164 with 134 volunteers across 25 countries, which shows that sometimes it's not about having too many projects, but having the right ones that really connect with the audience and connect to you as volunteers. And what you've told us is that every single one of these projects were important for you, and then the way that you participated and took part is fantastic. I personally want to thank you, and I know everyone at Peaceful Social Good, the leadership and the community team. We are really thankful for the work that you do and taking time off your days to support Peaceful Social Good. It's fantastic. So thank you very much, and I hope you continue to do that in 2022. We also have done some partnerships. So Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data is an organization that we have partnered with a lot in 2021, as well as the Information Lab, Tool Plus, which is the nonprofit section of the Information Lab. And also with the VADO, you may have seen, we are running a pilot educational program with the VADO at the moment. We had our 2nd session at the beginning of this year. There will be a few more to come before the summer. And we are really proud to be able to partner with these organizations in furthering not only Peaceful Social Good, but more importantly, the charities that we work, like Up Nepal, Sunny Street, Verifita, and we will be looking at expanding that level of partnership as we go into 2022. We also are happy to share with you some of the things that we are proud of. So things like having volunteers winning Tableau Public Viz of the Day, it's always fantastic to see one dedicating time to Viz for social good, and then get that being recognized by the peers in Tableau when that happens. I know we talk about Tableau here, but it's the same for any other tool that you might use, Power BI, Python. It doesn't really matter what tool you use to visualize the data. We also published a few things on Nightingale. Neil Riches, our director of editorial, has been key in connecting us to a number of publications. There's also, it's not here, but we also published in an Italian journal at the end of last year. So it's a really good opportunity to kind of stretch the impact that Visual Social Good is having. We also took part in Outlier last year. And if you have missed Outlier that happened just recently, I think there was a lot of really great talks coming out of it. So I think it's a good opportunity for you to go and learn more about data visualization. Of course, we were at the Tableau conference. We hosted a number of brain dates as well. So with that, I want to hand over to Andreas Colling. I hope I've pronounced your name, your surname correctly. He's the Deputy Director at Up Nepal, and I'll hand over to you to walk us through and maybe share a little bit more about the work that you're doing.
All right, thank you so much, David. Yeah, so my name is Andreas. I've been living in Nepal for most of the year for the last 7 years now. So in 2015, a massive earthquake hit Nepal that destroyed 800,000 homes. And in the aftermath, Build Up Nepal was started to help really the poor communities rebuild. And what we learned quite quickly was that it was expensive and not very effective to bring manpower and materials from the cities to help rebuild the houses that were mostly destroyed in the rural areas where they hadn't used cement and rebar and other reinforcements to make their houses earthquake resistant. So we found this technology called compressed stabilized earth bricks. It's been used in a few countries for some decades, like India, Thailand, Malaysia, parts of South America, and also a bit by the Boring Company in California. So it's been used a bit here and there. And we introduced that. So we train local entrepreneurs, community groups to set up their own machines and produce eco-friendly and low-cost bricks using local materials. So instead of bringing these fired bricks that are fired like 10, 15 hours away in an urban area, polluting the air that millions of people breathe, and then you drive it up on these poor lane roads, and a large percentage of the bricks are breaking on the way, we thought this can be done better. So with our technology, you use local soil, you add some sand and only 10% cement, and you compress it in a machine through a lever. So no electricity is required, no burning. And then you just water the bricks for 21 days. And that's the curing time. That's when the cement sets and bonds with the sand and the soil. And once an enterprise has been started, the machine is bought by the entrepreneur or the community group, and then we support them very intensively for the first year. Because a lot of our entrepreneurs have no previous construction or business experience. So we train them in how to operate their business, how to produce the bricks. We train a group of masons so that people know how to build using the bricks in the village. We build a real model house in the village to showcase the technology and also as a training grounds. And then we see that about 75% of the enterprises we start, they operate beyond 2 years, and they build about 10 to 20 houses each and sustain about 8 to 10 jobs. So that's why, like, now we're starting about 5 to 10 new enterprises every month. So that's why, like, it's growing really, really fast, which is nice. So yeah, and it's been really interesting being part of this WIS for social good. We had before this small like online map to kind of show our impact, and I think from this experience we've gotten a lot of good ideas of how we can make that much more interactive and nicer to look at. Because a lot of the submissions were, I think there were 3 categories, like I wrote on the Slack. Like some of them were quite simple, but you really saw like the impact quickly, and I like that. It just took like 1 minute and it felt like you saw everything. And some of them were more like in depth, and some people had researched their own like background data, how many people are in poverty, what are the root causes, and things like that. And then some of them followed like a really interesting kind of story format that was very, very different, but also like entertaining in its own way. And I think the ones that are presenting are a bit from each category. So yeah, and I think the main challenge that I saw in this was that we're trying to keep good data, but we don't exactly know like once when each house has been built. So I tried to break that down using that like peak impact date. So I think maybe that was the most challenging part, that a lot of volunteers, they use the start date as kind of the year the impact happened, when in reality most enterprises take kind of a year to really get started, and then the impact kind of grows over time. But yeah, overall I'm really impressed, and it's been more fun than I thought being part of this process. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Andreas, and thank you for also partnering with us to kind of give volunteers this opportunity to visualize the data. That is really interesting. And so
yeah,
now I'll
data
hand
is
over.
definitely fun. I've learned that through the experience. Yeah.
Yeah, so Frederick just chiming in there. So what we'll do next is we'll look at 5 presentations, and I think Frederick, you have the running order, right?
Yeah, I think the running order is the next page, the next slide.
Okay, so just as a summary,
yeah.
I think it's this may be outdated. We have 81 submissions for Build Up Nepal, and it's kind of a good mix from United States, Canada, Spain, Portugal. I saw some of, I'm original from Portugal, so it's great to see my country being represented. You also can see a little bit of the things that were used. So, and there's a nice map to kind of show where people are coming from. Frederick, do you want to talk us through the process?
Sure. And on the previous slide as well, I'm always glad to see so many first timers and beginners. So this was not only for experts. So it's always good to have students, beginners, people that are just starting in their journeys. So I think if you haven't submitted anything yet and you're wondering, just have a go. I think it's a safe environment. It's always fun to learn and help the charity or organization. In terms of
absolutely.
So the next slide. So we're going to have, I think there's 5 presenters. So we got Sarah, Nicole, Johanna, Maria, and for some reason the box process might have moved up. So we also have Yasushi from Japan also presenting, first timer as well. So we got 5 people presenting, and the way it's going to work is our volunteers would have about 5 to 6 minutes to present their data stories, so sharing the screen. And we basically tell us their stories and explain what they created, why, and try to basically demonstrate the insight and explain us what they found interesting with Build Up Nepal and the value that you guys bring to the community. Then after each presentation, we'll have some time to do a bit of a Q&A. Andreas, you can chip in and ask questions, but you as people listening, feel free to turn your microphone on and ask a question or put something in the chat, and we'll have 1 or 2 minutes after each presentation for the volunteers to basically answer questions. So hoping that will be quite interactive. And then at the end, Andreas would you can give your general feedback about the each of the 5 if you want, or you can do it after each. It depends, up to you. And then if you can give us your top 1 favorite winner. Even though there's no prizes, there's no winners and losers, but we always like to have one that's sort of the best outcome, I guess, and the most impactful kind of data story.
Right, I'll try my best. They were really good, so it might be hard. Let's see.
That's good. So we're going to start, and I have to admit, Sarah and Nicole are from the US, so it's very early for them. It's 6 o'clock, 6:20 now. So it's always a challenge to organize that kind of event with all those time zones. So we have to pick a date and a time. So thanks, Sarah and Nicole, to wake up so early. So we're going to start with Sarah. So Sarah, you know the drill. You've done that before. So if you share your screen, you got 5 or 6 minutes, and over to you. That's good. We see your screen now.
Great. Well, I use Power BI to do my visual, and I think what you all saw, if you were able to see the link, is a view more like this. And you can go through the pages like this or navigate. I'm going to show you my project through what they call the app. And so what I started with was an infographic, which just kind of condensed all of the data points that I put together. I kind of came up with 4 based on those metrics that were shared with us. And I took a look at all of the artifacts and the information we were given, the video, some different links, information, data, and I kind of put together what I saw as the solution and then picked out a problem that it was solving. And that's kind of my approach to putting this together. So you'll see, I'm just gonna kind of go through quickly the infographic because I also created a dashboard that's clickable and you can see each section on its own. I think why I did the infographic, it's just kind of like a one place, very condensed place to see all of it in one shot. However, it is kind of dense, so it's hard to look at it. As you can see, if you look at it, it's very long. So I'm just going to jump right into the home page. And so this is kind of like a landing page, and you can navigate clicking on the bricks to each section. And just to explain, there's these different filters, or in Power BI, they call them slicers, that you can, filter through all the data that's on the screen that we'll click on. So let's just jump in. I started safe and affordable housing, which is with the metric houses built and then enterprises established. If you click there, I'll just point out now the navigation is at the bottom, so you can click through still or return to the home screen. And so the problem, we've kind of all seen is the substandard unsafe housing. And the solution that Build Up Nepal has is safe and affordable housing. And we can see that in the data. We can see that by the number of houses built, as well as how much the cost is reduced. And as Andreas was explaining the process, that comes from using less cement, and it's faster to build and less transportation. I also wanted to provide a little bit more insight in seeing how have they grown over time. And I do believe that I updated this to use the peak year. At first I was using the start year. You can also click on the year to see in that year how many were built. There we go. So 105, or well, I guess in that peak year, how many were built, and then it is a running total. And then if you wanted to see by province, you can click here and hover over it, and that's called the tooltip, and it's going to show you by that province where those houses are built. You can also drill down into it. You can drill into it by clicking here. I'm right now showing you the districts. I apologize. So these are the provinces, and you can drill down into the districts. So for example, if you want to see the Bagmati, these are now the districts there. And then I also captured the most houses built by enterprise or project. So I'll just jump right into jobs created, jobs and enterprises. And this just captures a high level glance at the enterprise model, excuse me, and how, like, who's the entrepreneur, what is this micro enterprise model, and what's the data that goes with it. And we can see that, over 250 enterprises, and I did include that's together with the NGO partners. And each enterprise does create on average 8 to 10 jobs. And I did put an average here. And what's neat about this, it's interactive. And so if we wanted to see of those jobs who are male, female, if you click on the female, you can actually see on average they create more jobs on average than, for example, the male entrepreneur or enterprise. And then over here, it's just that broken down by the jobs by type, and also interactive. You can click on that to see the different data. And I just wanted to point out, because I thought this was interesting, about how on average, most entrepreneurs do return their investment in the first year. I think that points to it being sustainable and long lasting. So I'll jump right to the tons of CO2 emissions saved, and I titled that Climate Friendly Construction. And in my summary up here, I really thought that Build Up Nepal does seek a green solution, and it does add to economic recovery in this way, because it's sustainable restoration to the earth, and how it does solve that fire brick industry problem and the cement, like reducing the use of cement. So we're seeing that map again when you use the tooltip in the other page, and this is by district. So each dot represents a district, and the size is by CO2 saved. And then I did a running total here, but you can again click on the year, and it's gonna go ahead and filter and show you for that year how much CO2 is saved. And if you click through, you can really see how it is spread across Nepal. So that's why I also like the map, because it just shows it's not just centralized in one area. This solution is just far reaching. And then finally, this is on the sustainable long term. On this page, you don't see much data. So it's pretty much more of a story, but I wanted to also capture this key point here about there is some grant funding, but again, it points back to having a solution for vulnerable families, and in the end, it is sustainable for them, and they're not dependent on funding, or they're not dependent on other donations, because it really is giving them the power to be able to create their own entrepreneurship and then jobs in their families and their communities. I think I didn't include data on the schools I saw. And then I just found this quick little story. I think that was very neat to see these articles too, capturing some of the entrepreneurs and their stories as well. So yeah, this is my presentation. I know I went through it really quick, but it was really exciting to work with Build Up Nepal, and I appreciate the opportunity.
That's beautiful, Nicole. Sarah, sorry. It's amazing design. Andreas, did you have any feedback? Did you want to give some feedback right now, or you want to wait and give you
Yeah,
feedback?
I mean, I can just say I'm very, very impressed. And I also like that Sarah was kind of contacting me a bit during the process and like actively asking for feedback and what do you think about this? So I thought that was pretty nice. So I almost felt like I co-created it just a tiny, tiny bit at least. But I think the highlight of this this creation is that on a first glance, you really get like the quick data. So like if you only have a minute, you can see it and kind of get the overall picture. But then you could sit like for an hour and look through what happened over time in each section. And it really shows kind of that the earthquake was mainly in the center of Nepal. So I loved how the map, you could see year by year how like, okay, we started in the center, it grew there, but then over time, it also grew across the country. And yeah, you could really like, without like, there was a lot of data, but you don't get overwhelmed in the beginning. And it was really, really well made. So I think those were the highlights. So thanks a lot, Sarah.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Like a quick 10 seconds. Also, Andrea, I forgot to mention, but with most of those tools, you can save the chart as PDF, PowerPoint, screenshot as well. So we can do that offline later after the meeting, but we can send you all those files if you want, if you're interested to keep them for other use. Thanks again.
That would be great. We were already planning to try and integrate a few of the best ones in our own like online map there.
Yeah.
Make it look a little bit more fun and interesting.
Because you can embed into your website. Usually those tools have a web option where you can embed. So, and if you want to learn those tools as well, Power BI, Tableau, I think they're fairly easy and simple to learn as well. Next up, we've got Nicole. Nicole, that's not the first one you're presenting. You presented last time for our last project. So you know the drill. You got 5-6 minutes, and we'll let you share your data story. Thank you.
All right. So when I was going through the data for Build Up Nepal, I mean, you can see in the data that you guys are making just such a great impact in Nepal and how the enterprises are growing, the houses are growing. So when I was building this, I wanted to kind of know the context around what was happening in Nepal to see, you know, exactly what you guys were addressing that was really resonating with the residents there and really helping them out. So I brought in I, went through your website and your videos, and then also just went out and found some research about Nepal in general to kind of bring that in and show exactly some of these issues that you guys are really helping to address and help move the country forward. I always like to start with just the big picture so that people can see right away, like, what is it that you guys are doing? You're building homes, creating jobs, creating these enterprises, and then helping with the CO2 emissions. And I know that, you guys said that those are your 4 kind of main metrics that you want to follow in order to show the impact. So starting with the big picture and then breaking it down. So first, in the homes built, this is where, I was looking at the map and where everything was built and realized, I don't know anything about these districts. So doing some research, I looked, that most of the people live in rural Nepal, and a lot of the people live in poverty. And it was interesting, this article from the Nepal government talking about, multiple areas of poverty, such as education, but then also homes. And the home poverty was kind of that biggest factor when looking at the types of poverty in Nepal. And 16% of those who were defined as poor specifically had poverty in housing. So that's just shows like that impact and why Build Up Nepal was so needed. So I wanted to bring that in. For the map, I brought in all the homes built. And so each one of these are the provinces and the dots are the homes built. And I loved that you guys had some of the stories in there as well. So for each one, you can hover over and see like who the entrepreneur is and a little bit of their story and what's going on with it. As I was reading about the poverty statistics, I decided to compare kind of where the homes are built to 3 different areas. So one, the total population, which makes sense. The homes are being built where a lot of the people are. And as you said, it's kind of where the earthquake started as well, and kind of where the project started. But looking through as well with the number of people in poverty, it spreads out into the different provinces. And what I love to see was that, you guys have homes and enterprises in every province, which is great because it's helping people across the whole country. And so for this one, in terms of percentage, Karnali has the highest percentage of people in poverty. But Madesh, I'm probably butchering all these names and I apologize, has the highest number. And so it was interesting to compare kind of where the homes were built to where the people need them and just see that amazing impact. And the fact that, you guys have been just building homes on an exponential rate, which is amazing. And then just a breakdown of, again, where they are and who is building them. So it was interesting to see these NGO projects as well. And just the impact that, even if it's a shorter term project, it's making a huge impact on the country. The next one is the jobs created, which was so fascinating to me as I was learning about employment in Nepal and a lot of how the jobs are temporary or they're unwaged, and especially for women, how hard it is because, I was reading that especially some of the men can, migrate out and take jobs in other countries, but women have to stay. So it was interesting to see that the employment in Nepal, just how difficult it can be, and then how Build Up Nepal is really empowering people to stay in the country and stay there to create these jobs and how many jobs are being created. So I broke it down by the province and then the individual district to kind of help if anyone is looking for a specific area, they can come here and see like exactly the local impact on the jobs that it's having and the jobs going back to the economy. For each of these sections, I put in a link to where I was reading about it in case anyone is interested. In terms of enterprises started, just amazing work, especially with helping women and children. And so the fact that 75 new jobs were unpaid, especially focusing around that family, it's great to see that women are starting these enterprises as well. As I was going through the data, I was looking at that start date and realized that kind of the last update was in March, April. So just based on the growth, it looks like, you guys are just going to continue to grow and skyrocket in the number of homes and the impact that you're going to have. And most of the projects are still running. And the fact, these are kind of one-offs is just amazing. That it shows that you guys are really supporting your enterprises and making sure that they succeed and not just, giving them a machine and telling them to go figure it out themselves. It was also very interesting to see schools, because when I was reading about that, multidimensional poverty and just that education level is kind of struggling as well. So you guys are, not only helping with the homes, but with the schools and the education as well, and just kind of really supporting everybody from the ground up. And then the last one for CO2, I did not realize until, looking through this, just how much the fire brick, okay, you know this from last time that I don't work really well in the morning, so I'm like losing my words right now. But that fire brick industry is concentrated in Nepal and Southeast Asia, and just how many, tons of CO2 it's making, and that cost that these emissions are having on the citizens there. So, they can't afford the brick houses, but they are getting hit with the cost of the emissions and just all of these public health costs. So I thought that was really interesting in a sad way. And so, I looked through the data and kind of already had talked about the number of homes built and the jobs built. So I really just thought your guys' website really showed the impact of the climate construction really well. So instead of more charts showing again just that you guys are growing, I decided to put in a link to your website just because that had so much great information already there. I love that you guys included what your goals are, and it definitely seems like you're right on your way to reaching them. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knew, like, these are what you guys are doing, and they can contact you in order to learn more and help and have partnerships. And that is all I have.
Thanks, Nicole. You did well for early morning. I promise next time we schedule something US friendly or America's friendly.
No, I thought I could do it this morning, and then I just started losing it like at the end. So.
But yeah, well done, Nicole. Andreas, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I think if you hadn't said anything, we would not have noticed. So I think you had a perfect presentation. Yeah, so what I really loved about your work is that you didn't just read through like what we had sent or what was included there. You did your own kind of background and found some data that even I hadn't kind of seen before. That made it really, like, comparing that to the impact made it come alive. And it was really interesting for me that has worked with this, like, oh, that's interesting, and oh, wow, where did you find that data? So I feel like you really put your time and effort into that. And then again, just like Sarah's, I feel like it is quite simple to grasp, like if you don't have more than 1 minute, but you can also spend more time, and there's a lot of links, and you can kind of work with the visualization to learn more. So I really appreciated that as well.
Thanks a lot. Any quick question from audience participants? 1, 2, 3. I think you can ask your question after if you want. Next up, we've got Johanna from Sydney, Australia, and you might notice on Johanna's screen there's a little barcode. I don't know if you scan that way it goes. Does it go to your LinkedIn profile or to your Viz? Maybe we can try. So Johanna, you've done that before as well. So you got 5 minutes and you can get the floor to tell us your story, your data story.
Okay, sure. Thank you for the introduction. So first for this time, I took a different approach. So instead of going to a heavy analytical approach, this time I go for a more design heavy approach. So I really prioritize the structure of how I'm going to lay out the flow of the information here. And also, as we see even in the background image here, it represents the gritty construction look of Build Up Nepal. So first, I start with a brief introduction with how Build Up Nepal first started. So just to give like a very brief introduction here. And then after that, I go next with what's actually the problem that Build Up Nepal is actually addressing. So I started with a problem first, because before starting the key impact numbers, which I will later on show, because this will provide you with a really nice context to why the numbers actually matter to the target audience. So because the target audience that, as I read in the brief, it's supposed to be, one of them is the general audience. So I try to keep it like really simple, and also with like lots of big numbers here. So by showing this one, this actually shows why what Build Up Nepal is doing is still relevant as ever, because Nepal itself is still recovering from the impacts of the earthquake. And we see that there are two main problems. So that is, first is poverty. So that's one, the one which is shown here, 17.4% are still multidimensionally poor as of 2019. And the second one is unsafe housing. So this one, so there's still 3 out of 4 people who are affected by the earthquakes who still live in unsafe housing. And then also another additional information is, it's very easy for people to think, oh, the multidimensional poverty index has actually improved. So why do we need to care? Because it's improving, right? But then there is always room for improvement. So from this number of people who are multidimensional poor, out of this 17.4%, it turned out that there's actually a very high number of people who are mostly still deprived when it comes to housing materials. So highlighting it there because that's the main essence that is being provided by Nepal. And lastly, of course, there's still a lack of reliable employment because there's lots of people who migrate abroad. So, and this is where Build Up Nepal will come into place. So this is providing with a brief solution. So of course, the first one is the technology. So I'm going for a more infographic style here. So we see that this is the number. So this one, this 4 like list here. So it actually shows you could say the benefits of the technology that is being used here. So also adding a bit of a picture here, so that it's very easy to also see this is like how the brick looks like, and also adding a bit how the cost of a house actually costs. And then now after that we can see the it's hovering. Okay, so this one is wait, what's going on? Okay, sorry for the interruption. Okay, so from here, so the line chart here represents the accumulative growth over time. So we can see that over time, the number of houses has actually built. But when we come to the bar chart, which shows the number per year, it turns out that actually it have actually started to decline ever since 2020. So we see that possibly that's the impact of the pandemics here. Although starting from 2016, it has always been on a really nice rising trend. And if you see on the other hand here, also in terms of the carbon dioxide emission save, the pattern is really similar because probably this carbon dioxide trend is actually derived from like number of houses built here. And then the second one is the enterprise model. So again, some brief introduction of what the model is. And the key point here is in sustainability. So in terms of the key impacts, so it will be in terms of the jobs created and also in terms of how many enterprises are actually running for quite some time. So when it comes to jobs created, we see that it's a really nice upward trend here over time, the cumulative one. But then when we come to this also the same, it has been increasing. And even if we hover over here, so we can see the breakdown in terms of construction and also production. There's something which is interesting here is that although the number of the individual component here, so like in terms of construction, it has always been increasing over time, but except only for 2021. So in 2021, it actually slightly fell here. So we see in terms of construction, 2021 it's 603. Well, in 2020 it's actually 683. So there's something, like something that can be worth exploring here, because it's actually not in 2020, which is after pandemics, but it's in 2021. And then the one here, so this one really shows that actually the micro enterprise model is working really well, with how we see that 84% of the enterprises are still running for quite some time. And we see the rest is recently started, closed, or they are struggling. So when it comes to inclusiveness, we see that there are different types of enterprises here. So we already know that many, especially men, have migrated abroad because there's lack of reliable employment here. But then what is really great here is because Build Up Nepal has provided a platform for women entrepreneurs to even have a job opportunity and also become a successful entrepreneur. And if you see here from the bar chart, actually in terms of the proportion, actually it's a very low proportion of women entrepreneurs are actually closed or sold. If we compare it with the other types, like let's say in terms of entrepreneurs, or when it comes to disadvantaged groups, or like other types, which maybe really show how these women entrepreneurs are like much stronger than what most people think. And and to begin with, they don't even really have that much job opportunity in the first place. So here we go with the most interesting one. So yes, I'm going with a map on a table. So yes, I'm going in a blue color so far because it's supposed to be like a blueprint, because this is supposed to be when you're building a house, then there's going to be a blueprint. So, but the difference is just, yes, you can hover over here and see more description. So let's scroll, and then we can see the difference in a different year. Yeah, it's running for some time. Okay, so now we see here in 2019. So this is how the projects are distributed in 2019. And then we see on the right side, this is the key metrics, which have changed according to the year that we have filtered. So how to read this? Yes, so there are this total number of houses, this total number of jobs, and the security safe. And all these are coming from like these enterprises, which are 45 up running, and 6 which have actually closed by now. And we can also filter according to the province, and we can see and just explore around here and see that this is only 6 here running and none is actually closed. And lastly, the call to action. So this is just like the goals in big numbers. And if people are interested and they want to have a look further, so they'll just need to click here and they'll be directed to the website. So yes, that's it. Thank you for listening.
Such a great job, Johanna. I think you probably can't see the message on the chat, but everybody's commenting about your design and the style. I think is really, really well done. So I love it, and I'm sure a lot of people love it. Andreas, did you have any comment, questions?
Yeah, I think this one was like, it was very nice. Like you just kind of scroll down and it was really easy to digest, and the coloring and how you had like put in the pictures, it was very like nicely made. I think not like too much of anything, but still you can get some depth. I think I like that. I also liked that breakdown you had on entrepreneur type, and that you actually highlighted that women entrepreneurs, even though we have less, they are more successful. And that is actually our experience. I think the women in general starting and getting into this, they are quite hesitant. Like it's construction, it's traditionally like male dominated. Is this for me? And they really think it through. And once they commit, they kind of really commit. And it's nice to see that you really kind of visualized that learning. My only kind of a little bit critical feedback is that I think on the houses and jobs and CO2 maybe, you had used the start date as the date when the impact happened. And later, like we were discussing quite a bit on Slack, I don't know if everyone saw all that, but we added a column called peak impact date, which more represents maybe like an average where the impact happened. So we've had kind of exponential growth, and then it was slowing a little bit in the initial COVID, and then it kind of picked up again. So I think, yeah, if you wanted to, it would be nice like to have the final version updated where you use the peak impact date and not the start date showing when the impact happened. But I think like we should have maybe thought about that before we shared it. I just haven't worked with data so much before, so it became obvious afterwards.
Easy to change.
I'll send you
All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions from a lot of claps in the chat? Beautiful, Johanna, well done. So Sarah, Nicole, and Johanna presented before, but next we've got two first-timers. So first time, Maria will be next, Maria Fedorova from Costa Rica. Is that right? Is it where you're from?
Yes, it is. I'm in solidarity with the people from US. It's 1 hour earlier here, so.
Bring me coffee. So Maria, that's it. You can present, you share your screen, and then you basically show us your data stories. And yours is very different. So it's nothing to do with Tableau or Power BI, so something very, very different, but beautiful. So you got 5-6 minutes. Thanks, Maria.
Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we see your screen now. No good.
Okay. So yeah, I also wanted to have a bit of a different approach from kind of dashboard exploratory style, and have more a bit of a storytelling explanatory piece that kind of unfolds as you scroll. So the first view is like a bit of introduction, and then a map, which kind of just gives you an understanding where all the projects are, and that they cover all the provinces, like many already said. And then these projects are kind of divided in these circles, which tells you something about them, like that, you know, the entrepreneurs are being traded and NGOs are participating, and also serves as a bit of a like interactive data-driven introduction to the story. And you can see that like this project is running, and then it goes into more details that focuses on the feedback, and that's like probably the most interesting part. And the reasoning behind this presentation that I did is that you know, there were a lot of numbers that's like about the totals, and it's very hard for us as humans to grasp numbers in abstraction. So if like 100 houses would mean different things to different people, but alone like CO2 levels. And people generally don't remember numbers, but they remember metaphors and stories. So I try to visualize, you know, very abstract number of 42 tons of CO2 emissions and something more tangible, such as trees. So that people can probably imagine and can actually see a presentation of it, and maybe I can remember something from it. The same goes for the houses, which is like the total 6,000 of houses that I visualized. It's each house. And as you scroll through all of these houses, you kind of get blobs of information on them. So you can see like not only the totals, but also averages, like in every project built how many houses. And the reason, like, and you have to scroll for like a few seconds. These blobs, they're like to not make you bored, but I could have also like condensed these houses and make them tiny, but I did not on purpose, so that as you scroll, you're kind of forced to think about how many houses there are, and maybe you can like for a few seconds actually imagine like people living there and the impact provided, which would take you a bit more time than, you know, just looking at the number. And the same kind of goes to the for jobs, which you visualize as one person to kind of drive the point that it's actually people, local communities that you provide the jobs for, and also have like the averages and the totals and the breakdown of the jobs in the production and construction. Yeah. That's it.
I like when you said that's it. It's amazing. It sounds so simple. Yeah, I love it. Everybody's loving it as well. Maria, well done.
Thank you.
I don't know if people have questions in the room, in the virtual room. Andreas, did you want to give some comments or feedback?
Yeah, I think I picked this one because it was really different from the other submissions, and I just loved the kind of scrolling storyline. You just felt like, I don't know, the whole working half the day, you've seen so many things, and here comes just a beautiful scrolling story along, and it was just so easy to digest, and yeah, very, very pretty also, and a bit sweet kind of. So yeah, really, really liked it.
Maria, for people that are not familiar, so we've seen Tableau, Power BI. Which tool did you use to create that beautiful piece of work?
Thank you. It's a JavaScript, and it's built with the framework Svelte and D3 for the visualizations and the Greenstock JavaScript library for the scrolling piece. But it's all like based on the JavaScript.
Cool. Is that easy for beginners?
No.
No.
It has a bit of a steep learning curve, but the Svelte framework, which is like what I used, I find it quite easy for the beginners as compared to like other frameworks, it's React or others. So it's more like if you know a bit of JavaScript, it's easy to start with, I think.
What about those little icons? Did you create them yourself in a different package?
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
I drew them in Illustrator.
Wow, it's nice. Well done again.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience? Apart from learning how to create that? I'm sure Mari can show us and maybe run a training session at some stage. If we don't have any questions, next person to present is Yasushi from Tokyo, Japan.
Yes, Japan, Tokyo.
So welcome. You're the first timer. First time you're
Yes.
First time you're participating to this.
Yeah, it's first time. It's maybe I'm only the person from Japan now. I'm not sure about that. Sometimes, generally, English event for Japanese people is really bit tough. So I just try to, how to say, make some connection with all. Yeah. Actually, the Japanese Business for Social Good community is also very good, but it's very difficult to provide some exposure because of the language barrier sometimes. So yeah, but anyway, can I start my presentation?
Share your screen, show us your piece of work, and then we listen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, but however, to be honest, I'm a bit nervous because the format for presentation is really, really good. So, but anyway, let me try to explain what I did. My dashboard. Sorry, just a moment. Freezing. Okay. So I try to pick up the theme about the impact from the Build Up Nepal organization, which is very, how to say, many type of good things. Then I started actually that we have the 3 sections in this dashboard. Then I started with the first, what is a challenge in Nepal generally. Then in my understanding, in general, the poverty lying on the all other problem. So I try to emphasize how much is the poverty is critical in Nepal. So maybe sometimes the audience doesn't understand that kind of thing. So I would like to emphasize this again with the data. Actually, this is retrieved from the other place. However, the message is the first 1/9 of the world average in 1916 over years. Then even right now, still 1/9 of the world average. it's a starting point the to speak about the Build Up Nepal organization. Sorry. Then maybe go down. Oh, no, it doesn't work. Sorry, I will go down to the next section. The second section. I try to summarize the impact from the Build Up Nepal organization. Then the first thing, the direct impact is actually the non-fired interlocking brick. It's a kind of the very innovative product the organization is providing to the entrepreneurs or those who wants to start up the business. Then this is the explanation, but I wanted to avoid that to how to say display all from the beginning. Then if mouse over to the circle, that we can see the explanation about that kind of the interlocking bricks, how beneficial it is. Then this is the first product we provide, and then which goes to the 3 impact I picked up. Actually the fact is a bit more, how to say, impact like school or etc. However, we just limit the scope to the 3 things. The first one, the 6,000 houses built. Maybe the previous presenters already explained a lot, so I will try to just show how to see it in this dashboard. But this is deeply connected to the SDGs number 11, so which is already more common about the how do I say, the audience of this kind of the visualization. Then next one, the same here, the 3,000 jobs created so far, then which is deeply connected to the number 1 agenda of the SDG. Then last one, that we have the 45 tons of the CO2 saved already, then which is connected to the number 13, which is most critical so far, I think. Then each one that we had some bit more explanation on the circle, we can see by mouse over, right? Okay, so then final section here, then going down to more detail. Then the question here is the who and how the society who makes the society getting better. Yeah, in this map, this circle size represents the number of jobs created. Sorry, I missed to mention that here, but how to say, if we see the place, I'm not familiar with the how to say place about Nepal, but this represents each project place. Then at the same time, that we can see the time and the region in the Nepal. Then we can see which kind of the players are trying to get how to say, provide that kind of blocks, houses, schools, etc. Then now we see the green are most in this place. So entrepreneur works most right now, and followed by the NGO. Then for the 3 rest, they don't have the very many number of the projects so far. Then now my suggestion, it may be a hint to grow more growth is how to say, to support the more kind of the personalized business, like side business by the personal company, etc. That kind of the idea will be able to grow this impact more, because going back to this chart, if we see the impact over time, the 2019 is the most impacted area. However, it's going to slow down going to the 2020 or 2021. So if we go, we can go to the kind of next stage of the growth, that we have the opportunity of the returning migrant or husband or family, more personal the opportunity. They should have that kind of demand. However, we need to connect against the supply and demand together. So that may be the how do I say, the opportunity to grow more. Anyway, then the last thing, I saw the data carefully, and then we found that each dot has the every story in the data. So I try to show the each one. For example, the biggest one is here. So data had some kind of the brief explanation. What was the how to say business going on and how it ends for the some cases. So if we want to have more detail, that we can see that each dot, then everything has a story. Every dot has a story. I mean the one record in the database is not only the one line, but each one has the story behind. So I just wanted to show this at the bottom of my presentation. Yeah, so sorry, I speak a lot, maybe takes more time, but that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot. And I love every dot as a story. I think that's really something sometimes we forget. It's very true. The SDG, the fact that you went and you added more data, use the SDGs, that I think was amazing as well. I'm sure a lot of people commented on the chat. So for first timer, Yasushi, you did very well. So you can do it again next time. Yeah, now you got training. Amazing.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, not good. Yeah, very excellent. Andreas.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I can only agree. I mean, the language barrier was barely there. Like it was just perfect. Your presentation, the English in the whole graph and everything. I thought like it was very intuitive. It was simple and very, very beautiful. And I liked how you kind of summarized all the impact areas in just those simple graphs. Like you set the kind of the tone with the, you know, the poverty, the GDP per capita worldwide and in Nepal, and then you just in 1 second you just understand, okay, this is challenging, and then how the jobs and houses were increasing and the CO2 went down, and how you connected that with SDGs. That was also just really brilliant and beautiful, I think. And then in the end, how you also did like each dot, and you can see the little stories, kind of how all those stories made up those simple graphs. So I think it was, yeah, very thought through. So well, very well done.
Yeah, really appreciate for comment.
So Andreas, you're gonna have the tough job. So I don't know where you want to go with it. I don't know if you want to give a general feedback about the 81 presentations, but then if you can be kind enough to tell us which one was your favorite, if there's a winner, and then we can close off the Build Up Nepal presentations. I'm also going, while you do that, I'm going to post in the chat the link to the dashboard that contains all the 81 links submissions. So if you want to go back to them and navigate them, it's always good to go back and then have a bit of a browse, because in 5 minutes it's pretty quick. But yeah, Andreas, over to you now.
Yeah, so you made it very, very difficult. Everyone had such a nice presentation as well, so make it even more difficult. But I think if I had to choose, just like, I think I gave feedback already on each one, so I don't think I have to repeat that. So I think if I had to make one winner, it will be too hard. So I would make maybe 2 winners. And my first one would be Sarah's, because I felt like it had both kind of the simple and the very, very detailed data. So I feel like if someone asked me kind of, can you, send me something easy to read or to go through and to understand what is Build Up Nepal doing? And I think like just sending a link to that, you kind of had everything. But if someone has only 1 minute, you can get 1 minute from it. And then if you have an hour, you can just work through it. And then I also want to give an award or second shared first place to Maria, because I just thought that was such a, I don't know, unique way. It's just like, it was very, very different from most of the other submissions. And it's also in the same way, it told kind of the whole story, but in a very, very different and just beautiful way.
Thank you.
And then very interesting to see that almost all the top submissions were from women. So it's nice to see. Well done.
Great. Do we have anyone in the audience have a question for Andreas or for the top 5? We've got 5 minutes before we move on to the next part of the agenda. No questions or comments or general comments? Just open your microphone and turn your camera on and have a bit of a chat, informal. No questions? So I'm going to let David take over again, but on behalf of With Social Goods, I wish to thank everyone. 81 presentations, I think that's our records. If you're in the call today, you haven't done any presentations yet because you're a bit shy, you're a beginner. We're going to have a project happening in March, so you can always join in. As I said before, it's not only for experts, so beginners can join, you can learn as well in the same time. Also wish to thank Andreas a lot. So he had to go through the 81 presentations in a couple of days. Pretty quick turnaround. Also thanks Andreas to be so active in the Slack channel, always asking and answering questions and giving feedback, I think, which was awesome. So thanks a lot, Andreas. And as a follow-up, as I said, we're going to ask the volunteers that presented to maybe package up the dashboard into PowerPoint slides or screenshots, so you can use those for later. Because if you want to run meetings and you want to use any of those screenshots, you feel free to use them. But I think, yeah, thanks a lot. I think we're closing off the. Did you want to say something, Andres, to close off?
Just big thanks to everyone, and it took some time, but it was worth every minute, and I really enjoyed the process more than I thought when starting out, and just that there were so many different ways of telling the story and the impact and showing it. So we've definitely gotten a lot of good ideas. It would have been nice if the next challenge could be to just combine all the best elements of every single one and put it into just one, best of all times whiz, and then we can just use that.
Best of.
Maybe that could be a challenge.
We have to think about that.
Fantastic.
Andreas,
all right, thanks a lot.
Around, but we're going to move on to a different part of the agenda. But I know you're busy, but it's probably 1 o'clock where you are.
I'll say goodbye here and just say a big thanks once again. I really enjoyed it, and take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Andres.
Great, thank you. For everyone that is sticking around, I have a few announcements on Visual Social Goods, and as we mentioned, we'll take a quick look as well as the project that we did in December. But in terms of announcements, so one of the biggest announcements that we're sharing this year is that Visual Social Good is now an official charity and a fiscal sponsorship with FJC. For those that are not aware with fiscal sponsorship and maybe have seen FJC mentioned on our website, what we've done is to, as Fiscal Social Good, we have Mindy has been largely responsible for our director of strategy for kind of getting us here, is that we partner with this organization FJC, and what they do is they deal with most of the treasury taxation side of charities, and they support small organizations like ours to have the ability of kind of have this status, which then allows us to grow as an organization that allows things like getting grants and donations, because so far everything we do is based on volunteering. You volunteer with your time, and then the leadership team volunteers with theirs, but be able to start doing things like supporting the tools that we use, like Zoom, Slack, essentially just the operational things that we do. So it's fantastic to get us here, which means it's a really exciting chapter for us. And our Mindy, on our director of strategy, has really been fundamental in kind of navigating all the complexities of status in the US, but it's fantastic. So if you've seen FJC mentioned anywhere, just know that that's just a partnership that we have to allow us to be a charity. What that also allows us to do is to start to, as I mentioned, receive donations. So again, if you see on the website, we've partnered with them, and we have the ability of receiving those donations through PayPal. There's a couple of buttons on the website, as I've mentioned. Most of the donations in an initial stage, what they will do is to help us be able to buy the things that allow, like Zoom, Slack, email, and then all the communication tools and operational tools that we use to run the charity. And then eventually, when we start having more face-to-face events, then allow us to kind of put more of those for anyone that join those hackathons that we used to do when we all could be in the same place before 2020. We want to go back to some of those as well in the next year or so. And if you're listening to this and you haven't volunteered, you're trying to kind of, okay, this is the first time when I'm learning about it. I want to know more about Vis for Social Good. Of course, you can go into visforsocialgood.com. There's an option there to volunteer. You can sign up to get an email that tells you when the next project will come up. At the top, you have information about the projects as well. So you will know what project's coming up and what it is and what we're trying to achieve. So for instance, Build Up Nepal just finished, but we'll tell you before the end of today, we'll tell you what the next one is. Yeah, the thing that I wanted to share with you, and we are really, really happy about it, is that we have now completed our leadership team with the inclusion of our director of partnerships, and she's on the call in Balrif. She's based in Israel, and she brings a lot of experience with partnerships. And I've mentioned partnerships at the beginning. We hope to grow that area this year, and Inbal is fundamental to our growth and our success. So we couldn't be more proud to have her contributions. And then on the other side in Seattle, we have Katie Granger. She's coming in as our director of marketing, helping us to fine-tune communications, make sure that newsletters are going out, that you know about what Vis for Social Good is doing, collaborating with other areas of Vis for Social Good, such as Inbal or even on education, to make sure that we have a cohesive message and all of you know about the exciting things that Vis for Social Good is doing. And if you have any questions about any of this in terms of the announcements that we shared, feel free to drop them on the chat. I'll be able to answer any of those, or just come out of me if you want to ask questions. And with that, I'll hand over. We'll move on to our community pool presentations. We had that event that we run using our data in December. What we did was to look at our community and the data that we collected in a survey in November to try to understand our community, where you're coming from, kind of the level of skills you have, and all of those things to just be a little bit more aware of who you are as a volunteer, and how when you dedicate your time, when you can kind of relate and maybe identify things that you resonate with. And with that, I'll hand over back to Frederick to walk us through the process. I think it's going to be very similar to the one that we did for Build Up Nepal.
Yes, thanks, David. Yeah, exactly the same process. We've got 2 volunteers and you recognize names, and it's a bit of a coincidence because Nicole and Johanna were selected by different bunch of people. But it proved that you guys are amazing. What you do, you're creating amazing data stories. So Nicole, I hope you're a bit more awake. And then I'll hand over to you. You can show us your data story based on the Community Pro project.
All right. So this was such a fun project to work on, to kind of get to know more about the Vis for Social Good community and the volunteers. I obviously love this organization and community, so it's really cool to learn more about it. And I like working with survey data. I think that's really fun too. So to get started, I wanted to give an overview of Vis for Social Good, so people had some context on who you all were before then getting on to who the volunteers are. I went through a lot of different iterations with this, but I decided to really focus on some high-level questions that kind of the survey could help answer, since going back to kind of what the prompt was and what was looking for was helping to engage the volunteer base and help grow the volunteer base as well, which would then help also grow the nonprofit partners. So I really wanted to focus on that kind of purpose statement as I was going through the presentation or going through the project. So to start off with, just kind of some demographics on who the respondents were and where they came from. So in this dropdown, you can kind of break it down by, whatever different demographic there are to see who the volunteers were. Oh, it's going to refresh, isn't it? Oh, no, there it goes. So a lot of the respondents spend 10 hours or less on data viz at work, which was really interesting to me. I thought that was just a neat call out. And most are from North America, but there is representation from everywhere. So I thought that was really cool too. Like, it is such a global community. So the first question, kind of main question from the survey that I wanted to answer is, why do they participate in Biz for Social Good? And what do you like about participating in it? And there was a lot of really great free response answers for this. So I went through and kind of coded the free response. And half of them mentioned, it's one of the reasons they volunteer with Biz for Social Good is that connection to the nonprofit. So, it's not just data viz, it's not just community, it's all of those plus this like really connection for helping communities and that social good portion of it. 22% really like to be able to practice new skills, which is so great for growing the community. And then the connection portion of it as well, just being able to work with a group of people instead of just on your own. And I think the Slack channel really facilitates that, which is awesome. Most of the participants, are 2 to 3 times a year, and they do wait for a project, for the right project. And so that kind of seemed on par with what I've seen in the very limited time that I've been participating with it. But so one of the things that I thought of when looking at this was, if the nonprofit partners are announced ahead of time, then people can kind of decide like, okay, this is the right project for me, or set aside that time, since it is a time commitment to do this. Another part of the question that was asked was, how to increase awareness. And so whenever I work with survey data, kind of one of the things I start with is just a giant correlation matrix of all the responses. And so when I did that, one thing that stood out to me was that, the different education levels use different tools. So even though Tableau is the main tool, which makes sense, it started at a Tableau conference and it started within the Tableau community. There are people with PhDs who participate, and they're much more likely to use R, Python, or MATLAB. And so it was just very interesting to me that, all these different tools are used, and kind of thinking about, why that might be or what might be going on. This could be just an indication of where people learn how they learn their database. So PhD programs, a lot of them use R for the statistics, and then you use R more for the Shiny for the database. Master's and bachelor's programs tend to focus on things like Tableau. So 80% do use Tableau, but 44% use something else like R, Python, or MATLAB. R and Python could be for the viz or for the data cleaning portion. And in terms of where they heard of Viz for Social Good, Twitter and Tubbs were the Tableau user groups were the top places where people heard, but people heard it from just a wide variety of places. So LinkedIn, the conferences, through friends and colleagues, Data Plus Women, Medium. So there's a lot of places where people learn about it. I thought it was interesting, a lot of people heard it through Tableau user groups and thought that that was a way to kind of expand to more tools, because with, I know for R at least, R has a pretty big community as well. So again, if the goal is to expand, it can go to other user groups beyond Tableau. And then another part of the question was, how can they improve the volunteer experience? So going through the responses, the free responses, a total of 29% mentioned wanting to collaborate. And when asking like how they like to participate, 69% said they like to work with others. A typical time frame is 2 to 10 hours is what people spend on each submission, which is not an insignificant amount of time at all for these volunteers, which is great to see, especially with 80 projects for this most recent one. People are giving so much of their time for this, which is great. And 20% said they want more projects, which I think kind of ties back to people are kind of waiting for the causes that they connect with more in order to invest that time. So most people do, work on their own remotely, but there is kind of this desire for more collaboration. And so that was something that I wanted to highlight in the responses. So I thought it was really cool. A lot of people gave their time not only for Viz for Social Good, but also to talk about with their experience and to participate in this survey. That's what I wanted to highlight.
Thanks, Nicole. Who said that survey data was boring?
What?
you said that survey data was boring. It's really good that the way you displayed the data was really good.
Oh, I love survey data. Survey data is not boring. I love survey data.
And Nicole, talking about collaboration.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just plugging. Maybe explain us what you came up with in terms of collaboration for
this survey?
no, for in terms of if people want to collaborate for other projects.
So collaboration, this actually started a little bit before the survey, and then the survey just kind of enforced it. As I was talking with people through the community, the Tableau community, collaboration just came up more and more. We see some amazing collaborations. My tool is Tableau, so I'm just going to talk about Tableau. Through the Tableau community, I collaborate with a former coworker of mine a lot. And then when I went through the survey results, I also saw like all these people mentioning collaboration. So I recently launched an initiative called Biz Collab to help people, because when I was talking to people about collaboration, they all want to do it, but they don't know how to get started and find a partner, which can definitely be intimidating. So I started something called Biz Collab, where people can sign up saying like, hey, they want a partner. And then I'll just match people up based on their interests and their skill levels so that they don't have that initial, like, do I cold call this person? Do I not cold call this person? Like that kind of helps break down that barrier.
Cool. And I just posted the link on the chat as well, Nicole. If people want to have a look and collaborate for the next session.
We've had the participation's been great. So we kind of ran into a little hiccup because I launched it in January and then Iron Viz was announced. So I've probably matched up 10 pairs of people, 10 to 15 pairs of people. So 20 to 30 people, which has been great. But I also had a lot, of course, I sent out like the bulk of the matches, I think on Sunday, and then Iron Viz was Monday or Tuesday. So I had a lot of people write back and say, you know, they want to do it after Iron Viz. So I'm hoping to see some of the submissions from the people we've matched up coming in the next month or two.
That's great. Thanks again, Nicole. Moving on to our second volunteer, Johanna. So Johanna, you were selected as a favorite for the APAC region for the poll survey. So over to you. You went through the bulletin poll, so you know what to do. Got 5 minutes as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so for this time, the approach is also going to be very different. So in this one, if I refer to the project brief in the beginning, so the objective is actually to figure out how Fish for Social Good can improve the diversity and also in terms of inclusiveness. So in here, I'm going like really full blown into actionable insights. So in terms of the design, I really try to emulate just how the website looks like. So this really looks like a website. There's a title here with some big numbers here. And also like, yeah, you can just go with a button here and go to the website. So let's go to the like the main course of the analysis. So, in terms of the insights, there are 3, you could say, demographics which are underrepresented. So first, in terms of the age segment, it turns out that the youngest and the oldest age range are the one which is the most underrepresented, as we can see here. So it's only 12%, and like the oldest age range, which is above 50 years old, is 9%. And I could also say, in other words, that the other, like the one which is the majority, you could also probably say that they're the working age population. But I'm not referring to, I don't use the data for the occupation here, because I remember when I was answering this, I remember that there wasn't even an option to answer student, and I'm quite sad in there. But at least it shows that it hasn't really been targeted that much before, which means that it's something that is worth exploring in the future. So yeah, something which can be explored there. And also probably a segment which probably are nearing retirement or are already retired. And then now we go to the gender identity. We see that there's a really large proportion of the respondents who are women. And well, that's true enough, because even the presentation earlier, we could see that mostly are women. And I think this is not the first time that many of the people who present are actually women. And this is quite surprising given that people in the data field are usually, there's not really that much women to begin with. But when it comes to the LGBTQ community, there's only 4 people. And well, if you look at here, the proportion here, it's even only showing 0% if rounded to 0 decimal place. It just show how small that number is. And then the third one is non-taboo users. So we could see that non-taboo users only make up 20% of the whole respondents. So from here, I tried to break it down into top 6 taboo combinations and top 6 non-taboo combinations. So rather than separating one by one, so I'm going with a combination here because I want to see, like, let's see, when I see Excel, do the respondents only use Excel? Is it only for data pre-processing? So they only use it with along with Tableau, or do these respondents actually use Excel for the whole process? So from data pre-processing until making the quiz itself. So we see here that from people who are not using Tableau, the majority are Power BI and are Python or MATLAB. And there's also a reason why I'm just sticking with top 6, because if you look at the other like the other tools used, they're very small in number. It's mostly like either only 1 or 2 people. But it doesn't mean like they shouldn't be targeted, but it's just that it's a bit harder to target. So probably like in terms of recommendation, so there's some they're the tools which can be targeted in the long run. But in the short-term strategy that can be done first is targeting the user base for Power BI and our Python or MATLAB, because they already have a community, and so there's can be taken like they can be targeted with relatively less effort. So we already figured the ones who are underrepresented. Then how are we able to like know how to target them? So one of the like the step that you can do is looking at from where these respondents know about this for social good. So generally there are, this one is Twitter, Tableau user group, and LinkedIn. Yes. So, but then when we're talking about these mediums, usually like let's say social media, they usually have different popularity across different each segments. So that's why I try to break it down per each segment. So in terms of the youngest age segment, turns out that the number 1 is, okay, it's back now. So the number 1 is Tableau user group, followed by LinkedIn. So probably if the target is actually this 18 to 25 years old, then probably these 2 mediums are like the way to go. Then okay, now we go to the next age segment. So surprisingly, other is makes up the number 1 like medium from where people know it. So it's also something which is worth exploring. Usually, if there's actually a lot of other, because that means that it hasn't been really listed in the response option, and which means that it's an interesting like a potential area that can be explored further. So from here, the highest is LinkedIn, and then Tableau user group, and Twitter is actually like the 4th place. And then we go here. Okay, so this one is actually very interesting because it feels like I've seen something similar here. So if you scroll a bit upward, it's very similar. The number 1 is Twitter, Tableau user group, and that makes lots of sense because this age segment actually, this one is the majority of the respondents come from this age segment. Then lastly, we go with above 50 years old. So in here, it's also relatively similar with the previous age segment, but 36 to 50 years old. So, well, at least by targeting these mediums, so at least that means these 2 age segments can be targeted at the same goal. So another one, usually, like when talking social media, usually geographical, like it also has an influence there. So when I first like map this out, my first thought was, okay, the general overview was the highest was Twitter. So I'm guessing that because most of the respondents are based in the US, So I was thinking, okay, maybe Twitter is number one. But then when I look at here, well, surprise, it's actually Tably user group. And then second is other, and the third is LinkedIn. And Twitter is number 4. And then if we look at the neighbor, Canada, even in here, Twitter is like only 14%. So if assuming that overall Twitter makes up the number 1, but it's not the number 1 in North America, then why is it Twitter? Why is it Twitter number 1? So if you look at the other countries, it seems that most oh, this one is not Twitter, but actually many, yeah. So Twitter is more well spread out among the different countries. Although, yeah, and also to begin with, it's like not that small either in North America also. And then now we go with the frequency and and time spent. So the majority of the respondents answer that they're planning to participate between 2 to 3 times a year, and in terms of the duration of hours, that will be like between 2 and 10 hours. So why is knowing this useful? Because from knowing this, we can probably approximate the number of projects that can be targeted to have per year. And considering that many people also in the qualitative free-form response, they say that they want like a longer deadline because sometimes it coincides with their personal matters or work matters. So it's it's just safer to have at least have a spare number of projects, like probably around 6 projects. Furthermore, people also want to have some options, which Nicole has also already pointed out previously. And then this one, just keeping it here. So this one actually doesn't really have any recommendation, but I just find it like super interesting. So at first I just break it down per age range for this one, but then there's nothing interesting there. So, but then after I break it down per years of experience, there's a very striking thing that comes to me. So in levels of experience, so the majority of people who are the most experienced, who have more than 10 years, majority actually want to spend more than 10 hours. Well, in the rest of the experience level, they're either only want 2 to 5 hours or 6 to 10 hours. So, well, I think this is just like a food for thought for like all of us. I think this probably suggests why they could have such extensive experience, like even more than 10 years, because we're looking at like the number of hours spent outside of work to work on this. So yes, I guess that's it. Thank you for listening.
And thanks, Johanna, for your amazing design skills and also really good insights. And the way you tell the story and then you explain the data is really amazing. David.
Thank you.
From my side, I think we had, I can't see, oh, there we go. We have our director of diversity and inclusion, Charlene, but I'm not gonna, you can come off mute if you want, but I know it's 4:30 in the morning, so I understand if you don't want to. But one thing that, like from my personal side, as I was looking at the data that was collected, but also at looking at the insights that all of you found, for those that don't know, Visual Social Good was created back in 2017, and it kind of started very close to Tableau because the whole idea was first pitched at a Tableau conference, the last session of 2016. Also, because there's such a community around Tableau on Twitter, it kind of naturally gravitated there. What we've noticed in the last 2 or 3 years is that there is starting to kind of change that a little bit more in terms of diversity of what we're seeing, both from where people hear about from Visual Social Good. So it's no longer just Twitter, not only just Tableau user groups, LinkedIn, and as you mentioned, other start to have more of an impact there. And then also in terms of the tools that people are using, we had one of the presentations earlier on was done in Power BI. I've seen quite a few on Python as well as R, and it's great to kind of starting to see that diversity in terms of how we break away. It's not so much of a breakaway, but it's kind of giving people an opportunity to bring whatever they want to the table. So whether that is R, that is Python, that's Plotly, Flourish, Tableau, whatever thing you want to bring in and be able to visualize data. I think the more we do that, the better we are, the more successful we can be, because it means that there is no barriers for entry. We don't have to know X tool to be able to bring that in. So I think that for me was really fascinating, and even like the breakdown in terms of ages, and we also understand one of the key points that Johanna just made, which was around people want to participate 2 to 3 times in a year. And sometimes clash as we release projects, sometimes it clashes with holidays, school, or busy times at work, which makes it really hard for people to participate. So we're trying to balance between having too many and kind of in succession, which also kind of has a burden in operational side internally for Visual Social Good, but at the same time making sure that you have the opportunity to come in and be part of Visual Social Good and participate when you have time. And as you said, as the survey shows, maybe that's 2-3 times a year, and that's fantastic. Thank you very much for everyone that kind of participated. I love both of those that were shown. And if you want to see more of that, just head up to the slide to Visual Social Good on Tableau Public, and you have the links there for you as well. I just want to actually, I'm going to stop sharing again because I need to enable sound. So in terms of the next project, we want you to save the date. The next project will be Tap Elderly Women's Wisdom for Youth. I won't tell you anything about it because you have a video to listen to in a second, so you can get to know the charity a little bit better. You might have noticed the date, it coincides with Women's International Day, and we felt like it was a perfect opportunity to combine a charity that focuses on women's in terms of the initiative, but also making sure that we kind of can collaborate and bring those two things together. So what I'll do is I'm just going to switch that on to the other screen, and I'll be quiet while we watch the video. So we have the CEO of the organization to share some of her thoughts and a little bit more about the charity.
Hello, my name is Neema Tembele. I'm the co-founder and Chief Operations Officer at Tap Elderly Women's Wisdom for Youth, also known as TEWI. TEWI is a non-profit organization founded in 2016 in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. We are also recognized as a mental health stakeholder by the Tanzania Ministry of Health. TEWI envisions a Tanzania where mental health and wellness are integral in building sustainable communities. Our mission is to bridge the intergenerational and mental health treatment gap. We do this by training retired elderly women in WHO's Mental Health Gap Action Program. The grandmothers, also known as Wisdom and Wellness Counselors, provide free and accessible mental health services, support, and resources in their underserved communities. We implement psychosocial interventions in local communities and integrate them in different sectors so as to meet people where they are, to reduce stigma and discrimination, and enhance help-seeking efficacy. Among the services we provide are interpersonal counseling, group talk therapy, psychoeducation resources, life skills building, referrals to hospitals, specialists, and community services, and survey research. We collect a lot of data through our surveys, but unfortunately, due to a lack of resources, financial and otherwise, we do not have a dedicated data analysis team which would allow us to leverage the data we collect to its fullest potential. We strongly believe that we can maximize efficiency and effectiveness of our organizational efforts by using data-driven insights to better target approaches for goals and programs. As data analytics can help uncover patterns and power dynamics, which can be used to inform decision-making, we feel that we are at a disadvantage due to a lack of data analysis and visualization, which would provide organized, comprehensive, and digestible information for real-time tracking and targeting of efforts. Without big data, it has also proven very difficult to maximize cost effectiveness and efficient allocation of resources. We are extremely grateful to Viz for Social Good and all the volunteers that participate in these projects. As a grassroots nonprofit organization with a very small team, having access to data analysis and visualizations from the data we've collected will be a game changer for the organization moving forward. The Wisdom and Wellness team at TEWI can't thank you enough for your support, for your time, for all the work you're putting into this project. And we look forward to learning from the visualizations and the analysis and improve our organizational efforts. Thank you so much, and God bless.
There you go. So as you know, this is the typical thing in the case of TEWI and others, where they have the data, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the people, they don't have the resource to build up an analytics team, and often they use your time that you donate so kindly to kind of help out understanding the impact that their organization is having, and it's a fantastic opportunity. So for anyone that wants to take part and share their time in helping out TEWI and looking at the data that they have, thank you very much in advance. Before we head out to a quick Q&A, I just want to mention one quick thing, which is we will also have a special event coming out soon. We'll announce dates very shortly, which is around gamification. As you know, we've been collecting data. We know exactly how many people are participating and where you're coming from. So that data is now going to be used in a gamification project, which is to kind of give you a little bit more of a it's not a competition, but it's also just kind of something of a reward for you and your efforts when you participate in the projects with Visual Social Good. I won't tell you anything else about that because we'll have a big event coming up, and our education operational team and the community will be able to share a lot on that. So also, I want you to stay tuned to learn more about our education community teams have prepared for this year. There's a few really interesting projects that they are working on. The first thing that we did big was to finalize our leadership team, and we also just kind of finalized the charity side of Visual Social Good, and now our teams can kind of go up and start to implement a lot of the ideas that they've been kind of brewing in 2021. So stay tuned for that. And you know where you can find us: LinkedIn, Twitter, Slack. We're always happy to engage. And last thing before we go, opportunity for Q&A. And when do you want to take the picture, Frederick?
Are you taking the picture or I'm taking the picture?
Can you? Because you're also recording.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll just stop sharing for a second, and then we can go into Q&A if anyone wants to ask questions.
Do you want to turn your cameras on, people? Or I think it's always better to have faces. I can see Benjamin. Hey, Benjamin, how are you? So, Nisa, where are you? I can see the background, but I can't see your face.
Oh, there she is.
Any more photos, pictures?
Okay.
No, we can maybe take a screenshot. Done.
Thank you.
Yeah, now I found another participants from Japan. I'm really happy.
Wataru is from Japan as well, right?
Yes, Wataru-san, ありがとうございます. Thank you.
So, do you guys have any questions or comments, share thoughts? I'm also interested to know if people were in a call and didn't participate, but want to have a go next time. I know many of you have already participated, but is there people that are a bit too shy to participate and want to do it next time? Maybe, maybe not.
Partner with anybody if they're a little hesitant to participate.
I mean, you heard NEMA. So the data will be a survey type of data, but it's an amazing organization, so it should be an interesting project to get involved again.
Yeah, and even if you don't know now, but maybe while you're creating, if you're taking part in the next project, and feel, oh, I'd like to present this, you can always reach out and share. We have the Slack channel, which you can ping us on, or even on, as I said, on Twitter, LinkedIn, anything like that. We're more than happy for you to engage, and then we'll make sure that you can get an opportunity to share your work as well.
That's great.
Cool. So with that, we'll give you some time back. Again, thank you very much for everyone. I know we have people from West Coast in the United States as well as Japan, so just kind of pretty much covering everything, just kind of a little bit of the Pacific that we're not kind of touching on. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's been kind of 2 hours. It was great to see you all. First event of the year, and I'm looking forward to see you on the next one as well. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.